This lesson is all about how to explain evidence. Now you know there's three parts of explaining evidence: say, means, and matters. Today we're going to focus on the first two parts, say and means. Take a look at the pictures for say and means and start thinking about how those might match with what you do for say and what you do for means. We'll talk more about it in a bit. When you use evidence in your writing, don't assume that we know what we're looking at. You always have to explain it for us. So take this picture, for example. Can you tell what this is? Okay, I'll give you a hint. This is a black and white photograph of a cow, but can you see it? Let me explain a little bit more. So the cow's head is on the left side of this picture. We see its ears, and its eyes, and its nose as these big black dots. Now do you see it? And did it make a difference when I explained it? Here's another example of why we need to explain our evidence. So I'm not sure if you knew this, but Mr. Betlak is a werewolf, and I can prove it. Here's my evidence. Werewolves crave raw meat. It's a fact. Also, this, check it out, evidence. And the way Mr. Betlak asked, "How are you today?" Did any of that make sense? Did I prove my point? Unless you explain your evidence well, it won't convince anyone. I gave evidence, but I didn't explain it. I haven't proved my point. Say, mean, matter helps you explain. We're going to again focus on the say and the mean today. Have you figured it out yet? What does this picture have to do with say? What does this picture have to do with mean? I bet you got this one. Did you get this one? So let's start with say. Say where the evidence is coming from, and then also say the evidence. There's actually two things that we need to say aloud in the speech bubble. According to an article by WebMD titled, "Is Your Friend a Werewolf? Werewolves Crave Raw Meat." A good say names the text and names the author. A good say also tells more about the source. What type of text is it? Who says it? And what do we know about them? Is this a primary or a secondary source? And when was it written? A good say also puts any words from a text in quotes, and it puts the info about the source in the same sentence as the evidence. I'm going to show you all four of these things one at a time. So, number one, a good say names the text and it names the author. Werewolves crave raw meat. Says who? Werewolves crave raw meat. This is from Is Your Friend a Werewolf by WebMD. It's a lot clearer now what source I got this info from. But a good say also tells more about that source. Is this info recent? Who is WebMD? Is this from some kind of comic book or something? Werewolves crave raw meat. This is from a 2017 article. Oh, it is recent. Titled, Is Your Friend a Werewolf? By WebMD. WebMD is a trusted source of info from real doctors. Third thing, a good say puts any words from a text in quotes. Werewolves crave raw meat. Are those your words or are those WebMD's words? Oh, now it's clear. Werewolves crave raw meat, quote, unquote. And lastly, a good say puts the info about the source in the same sentence as the evidence. Put it together and it will sound even better. According to a 2017 article titled, Is Your Friend a Werewolf? By WebMD, comma, werewolves crave raw meat. All of that was the same sentence. WebMD is a trusted source of info from real doctors. If you add a lot of info about the source, you probably won't be able to cram everything together into the same sentence. I couldn't, but at least have some of that info with the quote or with the piece of evidence, and then add on a second sentence after the quote for anything else that you need to say about the source. So a good say does all of these four things. To get a 3.5 and a 4 in your 8th grade year, you'll have to do more than just say the text and the author. According to a 2017 article titled "Is Your Friend a Werewolf?" by WebMD, werewolves crave raw meat. WebMD is a trusted source of info from real doctors. So we've done says, now let's talk means. We heard you say the evidence, but what does that even mean? Take a look at this picture. So every snowflake is different. Every snowflake is really elaborate. It's got all these fancy structures to it. Your evidence often too is fancy. It's detailed. It's complex. One thing that you have to do to explain it is simplify it for us. Make it clearer. Make it easier to understand. A good means does four things. A good means repeats the evidence in your own words. A good means uses a transition. A good means makes the evidence easier to understand. And a good means shifts up a level of abstraction. This is the trickiest part, and we'll talk about it last. Number 1, a good means repeats the evidence in your own words. Werewolves crave raw meat. That's like the snowflake version. Here's a simplified version in my own words. Someone who is gobbling up bloody hamburgers for lunch might be a werewolf. Number 2, a good means uses a transition. Werewolves crave raw meat. Here's that same means that I wrote, but I added a transition. In other words, this signals to my reader that I'm about to do the means. Number 3, a good means makes the evidence easier to understand. Werewolves crave raw meat was pretty simple already, but try this language. Lycanthropes are alpha predators. As such, the most restrained of the species will salivate for the scent of bloody flesh. That is not easy to understand at all. But if I take that, I can make it simpler in my own words. In other words, someone who's gobbling up bloody hamburgers for lunch might be a werewolf. And then lastly, a good means shifts up a level of abstraction. So take all these specific words, hot Cheetos, Miss Flores, a score of all 3.5s, and eating raw meat. A more abstract version of each of those, for hot Cheetos, snack. Miss Flores is an example of a teacher. A score of 3.5s is success. Eating raw meat is acting strangely. You can think of it as the specific thing is an example of some kind of larger category. And a good means is going to talk about that larger category to help make it more simple. So again, a good means shifts up a level of abstraction. Werewolves crave raw meat. In other words, we can tell someone is a werewolf by how they act. Someone who's gobbling up bloody hamburgers for lunch might be a werewolf. A good say and a good means helps your evidence do its job.